And that one winter, I think I went through. I bought two tanks, but really I only went through one. And a number of people who have damaged psyches um, realize I don't want to suffer like this anymore, so I'm going to try something different. Oh, let's see. Well, probably the best example is, the one I'm most familiar with is Ireland, right? So in Ireland, I lived there, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s during the Troubles, right up to, the Good Friday Agreement, right? And the only reason the Good Friday Agreement worked was that there were on both sides, the Catholics and the Protestants, the English and the Irish. There were this group of people, no matter what, and they still are there, but they're dying off. Um, they were never going to give up their. No, but you asked for an example. You asked for an example. You asked for an example. You asked for an example, and I'm giving you one. The Irish people. I understand that. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, we keep having the same conversation because basically it's a motif of the thing we're talking about, right? You have this opinion about this, and I can appreciate your opinion, and I can agree with your opinion, but that doesn't mean it's right. It has characteristics that are common sense and represent what's going on, but it's not the totality of what it is. I don't think I've represented in the totality of what it is. I think that's a red herring you're throwing out that gives you a basis for instead of responding to the point and challenging the point and evaluating the point, it gives you somewhere else to go, which is what I'm saying is squirreling around to somewhere else. You asked me if I had an example where people who were in a psychotic mode, like the Israel folk are, that the Zionists are, and Ireland is a very good example because of the conflict between the two parties. It's almost exactly what is going on between Palestine and. Well, they're Jews right now. As a matter of fact, I said a couple hours ago, I sent an email about an Israeli talking about the situation that addresses exactly and precisely the point you're making. I understand that there are Jews who get their act together and rise above it. I understand that. But it's striking. The dominant thing is the fear thing. And the world's turning against this thing. That's the dominant. Yeah, but that's how those folks are being manipulated. The fear is the strongest vehicle for manipulation. Yes, that's right. So why do you say that you don't understand why they keep having it? Don't understand what? You were just saying that these, the Jewish people have this trope within their own culture that the world is against them, and that's why they do what they do, because the world is against them. But in reality, the world really isn't against them. It's the entities within their own culture and their own government that are manipulating by promoting that trope. Exactly. Not only that, but they grew up with it within their family. They had grandparents who were killed, and they grew up with those things. That also influenced them, as well as the government manipulating them. There are a lot of factors to it. But Grandma, like I said, I grew up in a number of Jewish communities, and all the grandmas that I knew that I would have dinner with, who had the tattoo on their arm, all said that no, the world isn't against us. We let this happen, and we can never let it happen again. And and this is pretty much every Jewish grandma I ever talked to, or quite few, who said it's not the never again cannot be. We need to build more tanks and guns. We have to have more love. Well, you certainly see it in the psychology and the policies and the dialogue coming out of Israel. Of course, because it's a political manipulation of that, and those guys are very sharp on the psychology. They know how to manipulate it. Right. But there has to be something to manipulate, and which it is. Well, it's called human nature. The biggest thing in human nature that's the most manipulatable is fear. I mean, look at Nazi. Look at Germany before the National Socialists. The Weimar Republic, biggest, strongest democracy. What percentage of people do you think, as kids, hear their parents tell them, "Be careful, don't really trust the Gentiles because they could easily turn against you"? You mean the Jews? You're talking about Jews. You're talking about Jews, right? Right. What percentage of Jews you think grew up with that, hearing that? The ones I knew? Less. What percentage of all Jews are you guessing? I can only talk from... No, your guess about all Jews. What's your guess? No, I don't guess. My experience. Right? Living... You haven't seen all Jews, so you can't talk to the general... Right, so that's why I'm saying my experience. Right? I'm not asking you for your experience. That's not my question. Okay, so... The question is, yes? What percentage of Jews do you think hear when they're young that you've got to be careful of the Gentiles and they turn on you and they don't really like you? What percentage grow up hearing that? I'm asking you a simple question. Okay, my simple answer, I don't know. I know you don't know. I'm asking you for your judgment, for your wild guess. I don't have a wild guess, but I can give you an answer based on my experience. Well, no, that's not what I'm going for. Okay. I understand not all. I understand that. And you can tell me about the not alls all day long, but that's not where I'm driving at. You want me to guess? You just said that. What's my wild guess? And I can say, I don't know. Well, okay, you don't have a guess. Right. I know you don't know. And I don't have a guess. You have a guess. No, I don't have a guess because I don't know. Well, I can guess. Okay, how about this? I will guess, and I will not base my guess on blind not knowing. I will base my guess on my experience. So my guess is that only 6% of the Jewish population is told that trope. That comes from their parents, right? That's my guess, 6%. Well, what that tells me is I think it's a bad guess. How can any guess be a bad guess? It's a guess. Well, it's a guess of what's accurate. No, it isn't. A guess is a guess. It's not based on any fact. It's not based on any reality. And I'm trying to do my best by, giving you a guess based on my experience of growing up in large Jewish communities. Well, I was just asking for a life's guess of your whole experience in life. Okay, and that's my guess is based on living in large Jewish communities around the world. My guess, when I was in Sweden, I was in one of the, when I was in Gutenberg, the only Jewish large community in Sweden was in Gutenberg. I never heard anybody say, watch out for those Gentiles, because everybody in Sweden was a Gentile. I'm not going to tell you that. Oh, and of course I'm dating a Jewish girl. They're not going to be sharing it with you. Why not? She's, her mother had the tattoo, and no, they wouldn't share it with you. Why not? People share a lot with me. No, they wouldn't share that with. They wouldn't go around. Why wouldn't they? If I am in their house, if I'm living in their house, sleeping with their daughter under their roof, why wouldn't they trust me with that one? Why would they? Because I was living in their house, under their roof, and sleeping with their daughter. Right? That's more what? More what? More reason for them not to trust me? I had the key to their house. I was a Gentile. I could have killed them. And our boy hung up on me. See, people with prejudice have issues. If you don't agree with them, you're stupid. You're ignorant. You're crazy. I'm asking you logic. Give me logic. I give it to him. Well, that doesn't make sense. Oops. Sorry about that.
And good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I hope you like that little slice of humor. Now, that guy, he went to college. I'm educated. He was brought up a Mormon, and then, he went to Brigham Young and, went to school under the Mormon tutelage. And then he went to California. And basically, he threw his Mormonism out the window, right? So, he doesn't believe anything except his logic, his what he thinks, and that's the only reality there is. And so that is exactly the problem with Israel and the Gaza Strip. Those two factions believe they're right. They've been traumatized. See, our boy there, and you can hear it in his voice, he's traumatized. He's not ever getting out of that trauma that he experienced growing up as a Mormon. In my experience, I know a number of Mormons, and he's the most traumatized one. The rest kind of still have their religion. And, the one thing I realized about Mormons, they don't try and be Christians. They do their best at being that, right? And yeah, they have this, ideology that we're superior to everybody because our boy, he, with the golden underpants, he talked to God and he knows the story. Well, pretty much that's every religion, right? But at least they live their belief. They're not hypocrites. Pretty much every other religion, in the United States, there are, 60,000 sects of Christianity. Not sex, but sex, meaning within a cohort of an organizational structure, there are things that make up that cohort that are sects, right? These little bits, right? So, like around me, there's about 50 Baptist church. They're all different. Church of the Golden Blood, Church of the Lamb of the Bleeding, gums. It's and they all believe that their specific little sect is they're going to heaven. Everybody else going to hell. Even the other Christians, right? They don't know Jesus like we do. Now, I wear a hat that says "Firm Believer in Genius," so all those guys can see it. Now, no one looks at all the buttons on it because they're all the different social activists. Like when Angela Davis was running for president, I was working for it, so I had an Angela Davis thing. I had all kinds of other interesting little buttons. And when you wear a button, you're trying to push someone's buttons, right? So anyway, that was the interesting thing. Let's see what time is it? What time do we have? Oh, it's still early, right? How much juice do I have left? We probably have 40 minutes to an hour. So this show is here. So our homeboy who believes he's a social, spent 50 years in social activism and so he writes, he went to Washington and wrote on the subway for the senators and talked to a few of them. So he's in the know. And he went to Israel and for a week, and so he knows. He went to the West Bank. He knows, right? And that was like in 1970 something, right? So, and he comes from a pretty well-to-do family. Well, he didn't really have to work. He's never had to really work. He went to college, got a little degree in geology and social and sociology, theologies. He was an ologist, right? And his only real job was when he lived in Colorado, and for about oh, a little less than a year, he worked in a social services office, right? And he wasn't even a social worker. He just worked in there. He was a worker, right? And then he quit because he didn't have to work. He has a trust, right? And he came back to Virginia and up there between Floyd and Roanoke, and he moved on to the old family homestead of 100 acres. That 100 acres now is worth $1 zillion, right? It's right up there in the most beautiful view. It's kind of like where the school is that John bought from me, and that Inga and George Solanovich built. A beautiful view. I mean, the whole friggin' valley. The view is $1 million view, and the school is like, just a piece of art. It's an art. It's not an art school. It's an art piece, right? And John took his trauma and his talent and basically fixed the art school. He fixed a lot of the physical things that were tearing, making it fall apart. He fixed the roof and the this and the that, and some of George never really had common sense. Everything was aesthetic, so he built that house. And when he finished in the '60s, it looked like something Batman was living in, right? His childhood dream, and it stayed pretty much in shape for about 20, 30 years. But he had all of these decks, concrete decks. He thought, I'll make it out of concrete. It'll never fall apart. Well, the one thing that concrete isn't good with is if it's always in water, right? Unless it's special concrete. And this was the cheapest concrete he could get. He mixed it bag by bag. And so that's another thing. If you want something to stay, you have to do one pour. Like the reason the World Trade Center didn't get taken down by those airplanes because each floor was an acre big, and each floor was a pour. They did the whole thing in a day. They prepared it. They put the rebar, the pipes, the electric, everything, and that each floor was an acre big and 4 foot thick, right? And it was attached. See, the really exotic thing about the World Trade Center was that it had no columns on the inside supporting the building up. It was all supported from the outside. We called it the bird cage. And all those floors were tied into that. So all the weight made the building stronger and stronger, right? So those floors couldn't collapse because they were attached to the outside of the building, right? They weren't held up by, so, the supportive, so they said, oh, that stuff, they pointed at, so the first thing they did was they stuck the walls in, and the walls were built in factories and pulled up by crane, and it was like Lego blocks, stuck in there, and then they put rebar in and bolted them together and welded them together, and then poured special concrete into, because each one of those columns, they were squares about 2 foot by 2 foot, and it was full of rebar and concrete. So 767 or 757, which is just an aluminum thermos with wings and engines, it was made to survive being hit by two 707s, which were like Big Mac trucks. Way, way, way heavier than a 767, 707. So those sucks, like I said, just a aluminum thermos. They were built to be very light, to be economical on fuel. So that's why that's, as they say in North Carolina, that's bunkum. So look that one up, bunkum. It's Buncombe County, and the guy who was their Senator Buncombe, he lied, he cheated, he stole, just like today. So, and that's our government. Our founding fathers were all freaking Masons. They weren't Christians. This one guy was going on and on about America's Christian and that the Pilgrims came. Well, the Pilgrims came for money. They were, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant business people. And they were given money by other business people to go take a chunk of America. They knew nothing about building a house, or they hired people to do it. So when they got there, they nearly died. The Indians helped them out, pushed them out. And and then spring came, and they showed them what things to pick in the forest and how to plant. Forget clearing fields and putting furrows, and you plant in the forest, and the forest protects what you're growing. Very much. I said, you guys read the Bible? And they said, oh yes, we're Christian. I said, well, Jesus talks about sowing the seed there. That's So the Indians had read it. They knew what it was, and they said, yeah, Jesus is a cool guy. We like him, And especially in New York State, the Iroquois Nation, they were the warringest war crew, but they had it as a sport. They didn't go kill grandma, and the kids. They didn't kill kids, and they didn't go after the food stock or starve people. They had a field where the warriors would go out there and they'd play a game kind of like something between lacrosse and soccer. That's what basically lacrosse is kind of soccer with a weapon. And so and that's because it came from the Indians. And so in that game, those guys could kill each other or do anything. And whoever won, and they play that game to deal with issues, tribe to tribe. So everyone, they then negotiated from a point of strength, and and they didn't get what they exactly wanted, but they were more represented. And so, and that's called diplomacy, and that came from Native people. They were diplomats before the Romans, all the rest, because all the rest of the guys would just go look at the Bible. The first half, Genesis, is all about daddy having sex with his daughters or prostitutes, and you know, and the mother always, behind the scenes trying to steal, lie, and cheat, right? So, continuing the trope of the original sin. And that's why it took Jesus. I mean, we were never getting out of that one. So it took Jesus to be the sacrifice, the blood of the lamb. You had to have the blood sacrifice. So it's all in the Bible. It's not like rocket science, but it's how you interpret the Bible, right? The simple thing about Christianity and theology, spirituality, whatever you want to call it, is basically God is unconditional love. And you can only get to that unconditional love through Jesus Christ, unconditional forgiveness. You have to forgive. And so when you don't forgive, all you do is build trauma. So in Ireland, when I was in Ireland during the Troubles, well, Ireland, the Troubles just weren't like something that happened since World War II. No, man. Since the day, go back to watching Mad Max in Scotland, right? That Irish guy, God talked to me just yesterday. That's kind of me. That's my Irish side. I'm Irish, Italian, and German, right? So I'm more German than all my brothers and sisters. And I'm more Irish than all my brothers and sisters are basically Italian. Very, 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 very reactionary, right? And I don't really think things through. Me, I think things through all the time, right? I'm measuring stuff, I'm analyzing stuff. That's what I do. And most of the women who are in my life, and I've had some amazing women in my life, I don't really settle for second best. If I enjoy my own company, I don't need to have someone bed with me. But if I do, I want somebody who's really amazing and making me happy. And I want to make them happy. And my always making them happy makes, boy, no other guy has ever done this. So they think I'm special. Maybe I am, but not really. Okay? I'm just a lucky bastard who, through my experiences, I've observed them and not forgot them. Right? I mean, I've died 7 times. I got 2 more to go. And every morning I wake up, I kind of wake up from death, right? And if you want to read any of my novels, any of my essays on any of this, right, I have them that I'll send you. Just get a hold of me at dudawake42@gmail, dudawake42@gmail, right? So trauma is a chemical, a pheromone, see, you are not your body. Your body is just a avatar. We live in a video game, right? Our spirit. That's when it's Father, Son, Holy Spirit. That's us. That's our spirit, right? Were you busy this morning, Queen?
Yeah.
Real biz?
Yeah.
Oh, so good. So you're taking it easy now. You're getting ready for the second rush. So is lunch more active? Breakfast is your big one. So let me show you something. Okay, right about there. Stand. Line your feet up like straight. Right. Okay. Perfect. You're doing it great. Now try to straighten your back as much as you can. Right. You're a good student. Now breathe deep through your nose, way deeper, more. Hold it, right? Right. She's learning something. You should learn this too. Hold it, and then let it all in, and all of that angst, all that anger, all that frustration. When you breathe out, let it out, let it out, let it out. You're breathing it out. You're breathing it out, right? And you're breathing in. You're visualizing God's unconditional love for you. See that. Close your eyes. See that love. You're putting that love in your heart, love in your heart, love in your heart. And then breathe, that dirty, no good. You feel better right now, don't you?
I don't know where I do or not.
Oh, you do. You just don't want to say you do. So try and do that. At least, every time you feel like,
I feel like getting lost.
I know you do. But she did it, and it affected her. Maybe she will do it again. So did any of you guys do that? Stand up straight, put your shoulders back. So I do that when I wake up, as best as I can while I'm in bed, right? And then I meditate on conscious intent I am, conscious intent I am, conscious intent I am. Do it all in one breath then. Conscious intent I am, conscious intent I am, conscious intent I am, conscious intent I am. Okay. And that intent I'm thinking about is God's love. I'm there with God's love. And I'm going through, because man, every day, I'm surrounded by cockroaches just like she is. She's in a, she deals with them way more than I do. I live out in the middle of nowhere. And I'm just peripherally. If I don't go out, I don't see anything. If Cockroach Boy or Grandpa Cockroach or Colonel Sanders drives by, I can be momentarily annoyed by them shooting up that road and destroying it, and no one takes care of it but me. And right now I don't have a car, so I don't care. So if they destroy the road, they can't drive the road, and they've already destroyed about 5-10 cars, right? And that gets expensive, and so the cars they get are even worse and worse and worse and worse. They get big cars like Tahoes and Sedonas, and that are on their last legs, right? Instead of getting a nice little roller skate like a Subaru or something like that. Anyway, but that is a plain, straight up example of what's going on in our world. What's going on around here is just a metaphor of what's going on in Israel. And so what happened in Ireland was like hundreds of years, right? And the English killed at least 20 million Irish over a 100-year period, especially during the famine, which they caused. Meaning, they made it by law. The Irish could only eat potatoes because it was totally carbohydrates, and it made them work hard, but it didn't build their bodies, and they died early, right? But by the time they were 30-something, they were wore out. But still, because they're Catholic, they're like multiplying like bunnies, right? And England can't stand it. So this one English guy who's learning, what plants are, in a Bacon sense. Thomas Bacon. Go read his stuff. They think he's a Christian theologian. No, he would say straight up fascist, right? And his whole take on science and nature and everything was to torture it. Like the whole thing we have about torture in our culture is thank you, Mr. Bacon, right? So this is all right out in front of us. So I was very blessed to spend 40 years in universities, not as a matriculating student, no, as a scholar. And I'd be sent there by somebody like Brookings or Rockefeller Foundation or the CFR or Trilateral Commission to be a field worker on some project they had in some university. So I went around, and all the good ones. I went to John Hopkins. I went to Cornell. I went to the one in D.C. that Joseph Campbell taught at, and I studied under him. So I studied under some really interesting people, and I worked with some really interesting people. And every place I went was quite interesting because they allowed me in, behind the curtain, right? Because that's, I was the guy who wasn't just a scholastic, read the textbook. No, I got to see the real thing and talk to the real book, and et cetera, et cetera. Just like George Lucas went and sat at the foot of Joseph Campbell for a year. And all of Star Wars is straight out of Joseph Campbell's mouth, because that is our solar system. What you see up on the movie screen is what happened to our solar system. Maybe 60 million years ago. And we had, the Oort belt, the asteroid belt. Those are remnants of planets that were, taken out by the Death Star, which is our moon. We have the only moon that doesn't rotate, right? We see the same side forever. We don't get to see the back side, right? And what's interesting, NASA don't have too many pictures from the back side. And it's hollow on the inside. They left all these geologic tools that radio back things. So like when, spaceships smash into it, when, rocks smash into it, it rings like a bell. And so that's, there's a lot of questions about it. So it's the Death Star, right? And the Germans, one of the first things that the Nazis did once they took power after burning down the Reichstag and passed their Enabling Act, which is, Homeland Security is a direct photocopy of the Nazi National Socialist Party Enabling Act, right? And that was called the Patriot Act, right? And so what's interesting is that the Nuremberg laws about race and all of that was copied straight from the United States Jim Crow laws of Mississippi and Louisiana and Florida and South Carolina and Georgia and Virginia, right? They took all those laws, and that's what was the super racist law, straight from us. Thank you very much, George Washington and Mr. Jefferson, slave owners, right? So, you see where I'm going with all this, right? Everyone has been pretty much traumatized and continually traumatized and always traumatized. And everyone gets in a rut. Stuck in that rut. Even if they're look at, our boy John Boy, right? I mean, he's, that's why he's the patron saint of truth's pain. That's why he is the golden canary in the mine of pain, of torture. And that's what he's done to himself and his family. Right? He's tortured them all. They've tortured him, just like Israel and the Palestinians. And they're cousins, they're brothers and sisters, and they're killing each other. Right? So I see it all around. Right? Anyway. Let's see what else we got here on the magic box. What's on the magic box? Magic box going pretty terrorist in that, it was designed, you got to use all these apps for free so they could scrape all your data, right? Now, every time I hit it, there's an ad and you can't get rid of it. Right? So, like this, right? Bang, bang. No, I don't want that.
Say, did you know that every U.S. state has at least 5 natural nuclear bunkers that are also EMP-proof? It's true. And I bet at least a couple of them are within life-saving distance from your home.
I really think it's all part of a much bigger agenda. They're not really interested in healing you. What they're interested in doing is controlling you. This is how all pervasive this controlling mind is, folks. This is how psychopathic these people are.
Max is on.
People everywhere have the same right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when the government becomes destructive of that, then it is patriotic to dissent and to criticise, to do what we always praise and call heroic when we look upon the dissenters and critics in totalitarian countries who dare to speak out. You've heard me talk about division, and how division is one of the main tools that is used to hold us back, and one of the main reasons why we never seem to be able to bring about any type of effective change is because we live in such a divided society. And this may seem somewhat irrelevant at the moment in talking about how humanity has been hijacked, but really it is quite an important issue, folks. It's very much part of it because the hijacking is only able to occur, only able to perpetuate itself via the generally divided state of mankind. All of these issues are simply symptoms of the one problem. That one problem being corruption in government. Essentially a corrupt system. I mean, the system itself is completely corrupt, folks. It isn't just corruption in government. It's an inherently dysfunctional system, and that is the problem. The issue that caused all of these symptoms to become manifest, that we're actually going to find remedy to any of the symptoms that we're all attempting to address. And I'm not saying that people should stop speaking out against problems. We need to speak out against things, but we need to also do other things apart from speaking out against them. We really need to speak out against them in order to bring about public awareness, but you can't expect to actually change anything by just speaking out against a certain issue. A lot of people have been gaining some understanding of the law of mirroring and how reality will mirror back to you the emotional state you're in. And a lot of people are having difficulty manifesting the type of reality they want these days. And there's a reason for that, folks. And essentially it's based on the energetic state of the reality you are interacting with. Because the energetic state of reality around us has been vastly changed over the last few decades. I believe that people really need to pay some serious attention to the transhumanist agenda. I think that the electromagnetic soup that we're swimming in and the damage that things such as smart meters and mobile phones and microwave technology in general is doing to the human organism, I think it's profound. I think that it's affecting us in so many ways that we're not aware of, and I really do believe there is a higher agenda to this. Because not only does it disconnect us from the natural frequencies of the planet, the natural frequencies that should exist all around us, it also provides a platform, a mechanism, if you will, by which we can be electromagnetically interfered with. And remember, folks, that everything you experience is electromagnetic. Every feeling, every taste, every smell, every thought, everything that you experience, everything that you are is electromagnetic. You are essentially a frequency of consciousness that inhabits a biological vessel. And this frequency of consciousness is able to interact with the world around it by means of electromagnetism. Because as I said, everything you experience is quite literally an electromagnetic frequency. Every touch, every smell, everything that you are, every interaction that you have with the world that is outside of your body is experienced electromagnetically. That's how the information gets to your brain. That's how it travels around your body. That's how it travels up your nerves. That's how things work, folks. And we know that things can be affected by electromagnetic signals. Look at the remote control for your television, for example. And since you are an electromagnetic being, what makes you assume for one moment that you could not be interfered with remotely by the electromagnetic soup that you're swimming in? And I truly do believe that the entire transhumanist agenda is about control. It's not about anything else. It's not about enhancing the human experience. It's not about improving human biology. I think such incredible steps have been undertaken in order to limit the potential of human biology as it is. Really, folks, it's all about control. That's what the whole transhumanist agenda is about. That's what the whole electromagnetic control grid is all about. It's about control. And humankind is being controlled in so many ways, folks, very much biologically, through the introduction of genetically modified food. And don't think that this is not causing a real problem, because it is. It's causing a huge problem for the species. And not only for our species, but for all other species. This is how all pervasive this controlling mind is, folks. This is how psychopathic these people are. They literally believe that they can do better than creation itself. They believe that mankind is the top of the universal food chain, and even God can do ourselves through technology. The issue really is helping people see that and helping people see the system for what it is, which is a very difficult thing. It's a very difficult hurdle to overcome because people are very much programmed by the television, very much programmed by the education system. They're trained to think within a certain box. And if you offer them a suggestion of anything which doesn't fit within the parameters of that box, they very often simply dismiss it offhand as being impossible. And it's the same with the system of control. Because it's never mentioned on the television, it's never presented to them by reporters and by the mainstream media, then they think it's impossible for such a system to exist. They don't see the media for what it is. They don't see the government for what it is. They really don't see reality for what it is. And the most significant part about it, of course, is they don't see themselves for what they are. Because it's when you truly discover yourself that all of the barriers break down, all the mechanism becomes apparent, becomes clear before your eyes as soon as you discover yourself. And it is this self-discovery which is also extremely beneficial in combating the systems of control that mankind in general is subject to. A lot of people find it very difficult, folks. They become aware of the system and it just becomes depressing for them. They don't know how to really get around it. They don't know how to live their lives normally. They don't know how to go through day-to-day life knowing that the system is there. It is quite a shocking revelation for many people when they do the systems of control that are all around us all the time.
Well, thank you, Max.
Last warning. If you don't claim your financial benefit this week, you might miss out on one of the most significant benefits for seniors.
I think that we are at a really crucial point. I think one of the main purposes of this is soul harvest. It's a soul trap. The well of souls that I've talked about before. I mean, as I've said, if you can get people so locked into a false reality that they're putting on glasses and they're in this virtual world, and really what attaches your soul to your vessel, the vessel that you're in, like it's the I am, the awareness. You know, I am John, I am Max, I am here in this world, I exist. Your soul is attached to that I am. If they can get you in a mainframe and get you in a virtual world where you still believe I am, then your soul is still attached to that. It's a place that I believe is called the Well of Souls. The whole talk of wanting to bring this huge demonic entity into being, Satan, whatever you want to call it, whatever you believe it is, apparently it needs a certain amount of souls to do that. And I think that's what they do. They trap people into the mainframe. And I think they've done this before. And I think that's why it's so difficult to wake a lot of people up. It's because they're already in the mainframe. I think half the people out there aren't even real people. They're just minds, consciousness that's driving an avatar that thinks that they're real. But they're not. They're not really alive. They're in the mainframe already. I think that's what all this is about. Of course, you're not going to get all the people to do it, so you need to depopulate. It's like a people farm. You know, you got to have all of this excess stuff around. It's like the corn flour in the stew to thicken the stew. You know, but there's only really a certain amount of real conscious people in you. And they want those souls. They want those conscious souls. They want them trapped in that mainframe. That's where they get their energy from. It's like a flame. It's like a fire. It's like electricity fire. It's the energy they need to power this demonic, whatever it is they're creating. That, you know, people will have all different religious concepts about what it is. You know, I don't even go there. I just know it's a powerful, energetic, conscious force that exists, and it's the other side of what we're really connected to. They're trying to disconnect us from that and get us into the mainframe. That's what I think a lot of it is about. And we have an opportunity to actually get through it this time. I think this is going to be one of the last resets that they do. Because even when I look at the world, and it gets very esoteric for a lot of people, you go back, I mean, looking at the giant trees that used to exist that are now tabletop mountains, the silicon life that used to exist, the giants that used to be here, the water canopy that Jason talks about that used to be over here, which would make it possible for things to grow to enormous sizes, and which is also talked about in the Bible and all sorts of places. You'll find references to a water canopy, you know, what caused the great flood when the canopy fell, all of this sort of stuff, rain for 40 days and 40 nights. And the story of the great flood exists in all cultures, in all countries. So we know there has been events like this. Whether there's been more than one, we don't know. But I think every time they do this, they reduce us as well, reduce us in size. As I've said, we think we're so big and we think we're this and we're that. I think we're tiny. We're like the fairies, but we've lost our wings. And we're running around in long grass thinking that these are trees, but they're not. They're long grass. The trees were the silicon trees, the giant tabletop mountains that went up for miles. You know, I don't think anything is what we're I've said before, I think we're basically living on the floor of a mine, and that as they're mining the earth, they need smaller and smaller people with smaller and smaller machines to get all the fine stuff out there. So we're at the point now where we're like a tenth the size or a hundredth the size of what we originally started off as being. And I think this is the last reset. And ultimately, it's a lot of what they're doing is trapping souls. But really, when you look at it on a deeper level and you look at it all as being one thing and one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively, well, then it's a form of soul purification as well. I've been desperately trying to wake people up because I believe that whatever comes through this reset, we need a certain amount of consciousness to make it true. Obviously, the more awake people, the more people who have the knowledge of what happened now that get through to the other side, then the better it's going to be for us. The better it's going to be for consciousness in general. So I've been saying to people, even bury time capsules and do all sorts of stuff. Just preserve this information. So how this all went down is preserved, because the people on the other side of the reset are going to have no reference point for what happened. The kids who grow up into this digital world are going to have no reference point for what freedom looks like. So it's our responsibility to preserve that. So I try to inspire and empower people, but ultimately now it's got to the point that it's virtually every man for himself. You've got to be true to yourself. Sure, help people, try to inspire people around you, but keep your focus on your heart and yourself, because you're the one that needs to get through this. And you're the only one that can do it. It doesn't matter about the other people. If they go and do it, they're told. Every time you comply with something that you know is wrong, you're giving away a little bit more of your soul. You're chipping away at it until you don't have any anymore. And people end up in the position where they're masked, and they're cowed, and they're walking between the lines, and they do.
When you look at the conflicts in Ukraine and in Israel, what difference would you draw considering the way they're carrying out their battle against the enemy?
Welcome back to War Room TV. I'm your host, Jim Jordan. Today we have Scott Ritter joining us. Scott, thank you.
Well, I mean, first of all, when you compare Russia and Ukraine, you're dealing with two modern conventional armies, large armies that operate the entire spectrum of weaponry. Aircraft, tanks, infantry, anti-air defenses, and so it's literally the definition of conventional warfare, large-scale conventional warfare. When you take a look at Hamas versus Israel, we're talking asymmetric warfare. We're talking a lightly armed insurgency, a guerrilla warfare type activity against a large conventional military. And so there's literally no comparison that can be made between the kind of fighting that's taking place in Ukraine and the kind of fighting that has taken place and will take place in Gaza between Israel and Hamas.
When you look at the response coming from the Netanyahu administration, they were talking about they are going to attack Hamas. Did they get anything out of these bombing considering Hamas?
Well, I mean, first of all, we have to take a look at the conduct of this conflict so far. We start on October 7th, and we see Hamas executing one of the most professional military operations imaginable. I'm not condoning the deaths of civilians. That's always, a tragic situation. But let's be honest, there's sufficient eyewitness account coming from Israeli sources that indicate that a significant number, perhaps even the majority, of the Israeli civilians killed on October 7th were killed by Israelis in a crossfire, the aggressive tactics used by the Israeli Defense Force, etc. Indeed, many of the people who participated in the outdoor concert, and over 260 of them were killed. It appears that a significant number of them may have been killed by Israeli gunfire, not Hamas gunfire. So, but you see the Israeli government tried to denigrate what Hamas did by saying it was a terrorist action, etc. No, it was a well-planned, well-executed military assault on Israel. And if Hamas is going to plan something to that level, and some people say, and I believe it took at least a year, maybe more, to plan this operation. You don't plan something, you don't plan to begin something and not have an idea on how you want it to end. There was a reason Hamas started this fight. And I think the reason is clear, that they needed to break the paradigm of the Abrams Accord, the agreement that was signed during the Trump administration that normalized relations or sought to normalize relations between Israel and the Arab world at the expense of Palestinian statehood. The conditions that were created within the Abrams Accord about Palestinian statehood meant that there was never going to be a Palestinian state. And as Israel was moving toward reconciliation with Saudi Arabia, recognized that if that happened, there would never be a Palestinian state ever, that Israel wins. So what needed to be done was to initiate a military operation on the scope and scale of which it changed the entire paradigm in the Middle East. And this is what happened. But it's not just about the embarrassment that they inflicted on Israel on October 7th. It's what they want to happen next. Let's be clear. The Israeli crimes against Gaza were predictable, meaning we know what Israel's policy is regarding collective punishment. They've actually put it in writing, the Dahiwa policy, mowing the grass. Since 2006, it's been officially stated as the policy of the Israeli Defense Force. So everybody knew what Israel was going to do. You just needed to create the conditions that Israel doing what it wanted to do on a massive scale. And so the Hamas attack was designed to humiliate Israel, and then compel Israel to do something big, not something small, not something medium, something big. And Israel has done that. And what they're doing right now is the indiscriminate bombing of Gaza, collective punishment of the Palestinian people. And the reason Hamas wanted this to happen, I'm being a little cynical here, but it had to happen. Just like in order for Martin Luther King to succeed in the civil rights movement in the South, he needed to be beaten by white police officers. He needed to be arrested. Atrocities needed to occur to shock the American public into saying something's wrong here. And so what Hamas did is humiliate Israel, and then Israel did what Hamas knew they were going to do: respond massively, collectively punishing the Palestinian people. And what is occurring here is Israel's losing the public relations war, which is what Hamas wanted. When you commit an atrocity, the world normally lines up against you. But what's happening right now is that the biggest atrocity being committed is by Israel against the Palestinian people. And this was by design. Hamas also is challenging Israel to come and get them. And Hamas is prepared for this aspect of the fight. They have gone deep underground in a tunnel network that is fully equipped to survive for a lengthy period of time. And the tunnels are constructed in a manner which enhances the defensive qualities of Gaza, whether it's been bombed or not. Israel's bombing is not impacting Hamas at all. Yeah, one tunnel might collapse and kill 20 guys here. Another tunnel might be damaged here. But by and large, Hamas, the military capability of Hamas, is intact. The only people suffering from the bombing are the Palestinian people. And again, this was by design. The more Israel bombs the innocent population of Gaza, the more damage is done to the reputation of Israel.
It seems to me that they don't have any long-term strategy on their part by these attacks.
Israel or Hamas?
Israel.
Israel's only strategy is to survive.
That's the case. If they want to survive, they have to survive with all these Arab nations that's surrounding Israel. Because it seems that by these attackings, they are getting worse politically with these Arab nations, with Turkey, with other nations. It doesn't seem that they have a long-term strategy for surviving in that region.
Well, actually, they had a brilliant strategy for surviving in that region. And that was to diminish the possibility of Palestinian state. Again, I bring up the fact that had Hamas not attacked on October 7th, there was a good likelihood that Israel would have normalized relations with Saudi Arabia. And that's the grand strategy of Israel, and it was winning. Israel got the United States to support the Abraham Accord, which eliminated a Palestinian state as a possibility. Yes, in writing, they say it could happen if this happened, this happened, this happened, but none of that's going to happen. Israel's guaranteeing it isn't going to happen. Israel's grand strategy was working. They were winning. The Palestinians were losing. Not anymore. And now what's happened is that Israel is desperately trying to get back on track, but they've lost the narrative. The narrative has been taken over by Hamas, who is successfully using Israel's genocidal behavior against the people of Palestine as a weapon against Israel. And as you mentioned, Turkish President Recep Erdogan has said that Hamas is not a terrorist organization. Now, we know that Turkey never recognized Hamas as a terrorist organization, but he's coming out and saying that they are mujahideen, that they are resistance fighters, that they are working on the cause of God. This is a big deal. And because Turkey is giving voice to that which is believed throughout the Arab world. And the Israelis right now are holding on to a wing and a prayer that they can get things back to where they were pre-October 7th. They think that they can defeat Hamas, but they know they can't. Hamas is an ideology, and the ideology of resistance is being magnified 100-fold with every bomb that's dropped on Gaza. Rather than defeating Hamas, Israel is expanding Hamas. Hamas has taken over in Turkey. It's in the United States, in the streets. People are coming out in support of Hamas. People are starting to recognize Israel for what it is, because Israel no longer has the smooth-talking, well-educated con artists who would sell Israel as an extension of America, a democracy just like America, that values as America. They're not even pretending that right now. They're putting forward generals and politicians who are saying things that if you eliminated the term Arab and Jew and replaced it with Jew and German, these speeches being given by Israeli politicians is the same thing that Nazi Germans were saying in the 1930s and early 1940s. The exact same thing. And the world is seeing this. This is unfiltered. Israel is not like us. It is not a democracy that has as its principal reason for existence political Zionism, which allows Israel to behave as if they are the chosen few from God, exceptional people who have an inherent right to oppress those who get in the way of the creation of a greater Israel. I am an American, and in America, a fundamental principle is that all men, and now by extension all women, are created equal. There is no supremacy attached to Christian, Muslim, or Jew, or atheist, or Buddhist, or any other religion out there. All people are human. All men are created equal. And yet Israel operates on the premise that Jews are superior, that Jews are the chosen ones, that Jews have a covenant with God to come to the Holy Land, and anything is allowed and tolerated if it fulfills that, to include the oppression of the goyim. And that is a term that is being used more and more in Israel today. Goyim, that means, it literally means an animal, a subhuman. The Israelis treat anybody who's not in favor of a Zionist state as animals. You know who else speaks like that? Stepan Bandera and his Ukrainian nationalists are the same thing about the exceptionalism of Ukrainian nationalism and the subhuman status attached to Russians, to Poles, to Jews. But we weren't allowed to say this because you couldn't speak out against Israel.
Hold on tight. It's time to conquer the trails.
Okay, I think that's good enough for today. Again, get a hold of me at dudaway42@gmail. I'd love to hear what you think about what you just saw on the show today. And I'd love to hear from you in the chat. This is a live chat. Hit that little bell button so when I come and do a live chat, you can be aware and join. I know that most of the audience is sprinkled all across the planet, and they're not in my time zone. So maybe half of you guys are asleep when I do it. I understand that, especially if I do it kind of before noon. Anyway, so, but I know that the majority of you go back and watch my shows, like Wallpaper. I would suggest that you go back. I have about 5 years worth of shows. I have about 2,000 shows. And go back and start looking at the things I did 3, 4, 5 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago, when I started speaking of the big splat, right? Now, I don't know how to use the YouTube. I don't know how to embed stuff. All I know is to give it a title, and the next thing is love is all there is. Because that's really all there is love, right? Everything else is illusion. Your body is just an avatar. You're living in a simulation, right? So don't worry about it. Be nice. Don't try. Do. So, hopefully, we're gonna have a nice warm spell for maybe the rest of November, which would be very nice. Like last night, I had the electric blanket on, but I think I'm getting addicted to the electromagnetic field. I kind of live in a off the grid. Yeah, I do have electric, but my meter is like quarter-mile away. Right now, the residual of the digitalness does come through the wires to where I am. Right, I'm down in a holler. I live like in a Faraday cage. But you put an electric blanket over you. You're. But I have no heat. I have no wood stove. I have no gas heater. I have no nothing. Right. And usually I would be gone, but I don't have a car, so I can't even go to Johnny Boy's. I can't even go to Florida. I can't go anywhere. I'm here. And again, I've died so many times. Death is not a problem, right? So if I die, it's not a problem for me. Now, I suggest you guys go and start looking at my past shows and document them, put them on thumb drives. Our good friend Dragon did that, and he used to send them to me until Johnny Boy stole them. And then, John has many sides to him. He has a cute little kid side. If you go watch the video of him playing with the squirrel, or him laughing in the hotel bed in California. But he also has a pretty nasty side because he has no control of whatever side is showing, And that's pretty much humanity, unless you're consciously aware I am. And the I am isn't this I am. The I am is God's unconditional love, right? That's the I am, right? And when the burning bush was talking to Moses, Moses says, "So if I go to these morons, who should I send me?" And the burning bush says, "I am a work in progress," meaning that's the I am, right? But they substitute that I am with the I am ego, right? And again, if you want to read any of my essays or my novels, a lot of my writing is up on xratted.blogspot.com, but that thing has been bought up by so many different people and accessing, I can't even access it. But you guys who know how to use the internet probably can, because I constantly be getting a hold of on my email, the dudeawake42 at Gmail. And people, wow, I read that stuff on Blogspot. You got anything else? And I send them my novels, right? And they go, whoa. And I say, so what do you think? Oh, it's great. It's amazing. It's no, I need some critique. How's my, does the sentence structure hold up? Does my destruction of grammar and spelling annoy you? Or does it, edify you because I'm really bearing inside all of that some esoteric truths? And they go, well, I can feel it. It's just stuff. It's not just I emotionally identify, but I feel it. Yeah, because it's a shamanic thing. It's like these shows. These are shamanic ceremonies, right? Anyway, so right now, I'm not feeling the best, and I go. So this beginning of end of October, I went. Well, October was my big doctor month. So I'm all blood tests, scans, all that. For a dead guy, you're doing great. And I am. For a dead guy, I'm doing great. But every morning I wake up dead. And, I'm in pain like you can't believe. But it's a blessing because it actually puts me in touch with God's love. That's the only way I can get out of that pain is through God's love. Not me. I can't do anything about it. Now, God eases that pain back. I can get out of bed. First thing I go outside if it's not raining torrentially, and I do my katas, I do my tai chi, I do my qigong, and that kind of gets my body going, that physical, right, in the illusion. But it's if I sit too long, like I have now, I start to rust. The pain comes back. I got to go because the pain is, and that's why I got up a few times, to move around. And the Queen, I got her to do her thing, and I could tell it affected her in a positive way. So anyway, I gotta go. I'll catch you later. Love you.